Is Jesper here? I'm not Jesper. I'm not a kind of a genius of presentation, entertainment. I'm not an economist. I'm a philosopher. And also, I'm a Japanese. So you should not expect anything entertainment in my presentation. But I will simply read a poetic fable. Maybe it will tell you something about the future of capitalism. This is a style of presentation, Japanese style, and maybe Zen presentation. Ga is an expert of that, but this is a true Zen presentation, I hope. Please let me start, and please turn off the light, please. Invisible Capitalism, a poetic fable. Once upon a time, there was a kingdom called Garia. In this kingdom, there was a small village called Japonia. In this village, there lived a sister and a brother named Chieko and Kenji. In Garia, there are many villages: Ameria, Euroa, Lusua, Sinoa, Esioa, Latina, Afria, and so on. This is a story that happened long, long ago at the beginning of the 21st century. At that time, in Garia, people lived under an economic system called barbarian capitalism. Under this capitalism, all of the merchants were always looking for money. And they all believed that bottom line and cash flow were everything. But one day, a merchant named Subprimo in Ameria village sold a vast number of fake products. And unfortunately, this triggered a very serious panic all over the kingdom of Garia. In this panic, the parents of Chieko and Kenji faced bankruptcy, and they were thrown into deep sorrow. Chieko and Kenji felt very sorry for their parents, so they went to the village chief to ask for his advice. How can we cope with this crisis? Asked Chieko. The chief answered, capitalism needs to become more mature. Kenji asked, if so, what can we do to help capitalism mature? The chief answered, I'm sorry, but I don't know. Go to an economist and ask that question. Then Chieko and Kenji went to a famous economist in the village and asked him, what can we do to help capitalism mature? The economist answered, to help capitalism become mature, we need to tighten regulations. Then Chieko and Kenji went to another economist and asked the same question. But this economist had a different opinion and said, I don't agree with this other economist. Tightened regulation will only hinder market principles. Chieko and Kenji were thrown into confusion, so they went back to the chief and asked for advice again. The chief said, then you should go to the sage living in the woods and asked that question. So Chieko and Kenji went to the sage and asked the question. What is mature capitalism? The sage answered, well, mature capitalism, if you want to know what mature capitalism is, you should ask yourself this one question. What is mature mind? What is mature mind? Chieko and Kenji asked the sage. The sage answered, mature mind can see invisible values. What is invisible values? Chieko and Kenji asked again. The sage answered, tacit wisdom, good relations with someone, trust among the community, reputation within the community, culture in society, empathy among people. These kinds of values are invisible values. And the sage added, if mature mind sees those invisible values, then mature capitalism values invisible capital. I understand, Kenji said. Knowledge capital, relation capital, trust capital, brand capital, culture capital, these are invisible capital. Chieko said, let's go back to the village. We should let our village people know the importance of invisible capital. Kenji said, so we should create a new capitalism called invisible capitalism. Chieko and Kenji bowed to the sage with deep appreciation, and they were about to leave for the village. Wait a moment, the sage said in a calm voice. And the sage continued. Once you are back in your village, you should take a look at the ground on which you stand. Why? Chieko and Kenji asked. The sage answered, because your village Japonia already has abundant invisible capital in its ground. 周知を集める gather people's wisdom. 三人寄れば文殊の知恵 If 3 people get together, it will be worth the wisdom of a bodhisattva. These are the words of wisdom for knowledge capital. Enish, destined encounter. おかげさま I owe it all to you. These are the words of wisdom for relation capital. 一意専心 single-minded devotion. 不利を追わず never chase superficial profits. These are the words of wisdom for trust capital. 世間様が見ている Society is watching us. 恥を知る sense of shame. These are the words of wisdom for brand capital. 一期一会 spirit of treasuring every encounter. おもてなしの心 mind of sincere hospitality. These are the words of wisdom for culture capital. All of these are the words of wisdom for invisible capital that Japonian capitalism has always valued. Do not seek out the values of neighboring villages. Recognize the values you have in the ground on which you stand, said the sage, and he gave the last message to Chieko and Kenji. You, the people of Japonia, have forgotten the importance of those invisible values, but only for a few decades. And in fact, this is not only about Japonian village. The wisdom to see invisible values is always there in the traditional wisdom in all of the villages of Globaria. So, if you, the people of Globaria, once realize that, you will create a new capitalism called invisible capitalism. Then the sage silently disappeared. Only the echo of his voice was left behind. Thank you very much.